Hey everybody, Rob Maurer here, and today we are of course going to be discussing the information's report on net new orders for Tesla in China during the month of May. This report was published a couple hours before market close, the stock dropped dramatically, and of course it was quickly picked up by other media outlets as well. So we'll discuss my thoughts on that. Then we also have a couple stories on recalls, some news from CATL expanding in China, an update on Giga Berlin, and an update on the Plaid Model S as we await the delivery event 1 week from today. Alright, so Tesla stock today, starting off the day just fine, trading a little bit below yesterday's close, but not too far in early morning trading. And then in the afternoon, we saw a report from the information. This was a couple hours before market close, and as this report came out, Tesla dropped sharply, about 3% in less than 10 minutes, and then continued to decline into close, finishing the day down 5.3% to $572.84. That compared to the NASDAQ, down 1% on the day. So that report is where we will start. The headline for this piece is, quote, Tesla's China orders halved in May, internal data shows, as crisis deepens, end quote. They go on to write that, quote, the company's monthly net orders in China dropped to about 9,800 in May from more than 18,000 in April, according to a person with knowledge of the data. The sharp drop reflected a drastic shift in Chinese consumers' appetite for Tesla, whose founder Elon Musk has celebrity status there. Orders spiked in January after the release of the Model Y SUV, and then slowly eased off before cratering last month. In March, Tesla had 21,000 net orders. Even on a week-over-week basis, orders so far haven't shown any signs of recovery, this person said, end quote. The rest of the article is then paywalled, but I did read the full article. There's nothing new in the rest of it. It's really just kind of detailing the situation that has been unfolding in China, all stuff that we've talked about with the Shanghai Auto Show protest, the government wanting to meet with Tesla, I think back in March, just to talk about safety. All things that we have followed as they have unfolded, so nothing new in the rest of it. I have seen a little bit of confusion on the net new orders term. This is always confusing because we've got sales, deliveries, production, orders. It can be tough to keep these things straight. So net new orders, the information defines it actually in their article later on. That just means your new orders in a period of time minus any cancellations in that same period. So that's an industry term that's not unique to Tesla, but Elon has used that term before, so apparently it is a metric that Tesla looks at. It's something that he has mentioned a couple of times in various leaked emails. I mentioned that both for clarity, and then also it kind of brings us into assessing validity. A lot of people on Twitter tagging me today asking my thoughts on this, asking if the report is accurate. Is this just a hit piece? Is this FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt? And, I wish I did, but I don't have any particular insight on these things than anybody else does. The best we can do is kind of look at the report, try to assess the validity, and then see how things play out. So the first step for me is just understanding if that metric is something that Tesla might track. Is that a number that someone could possibly access and then leak? And I think the answer to both of those is yes. From there, you want to consider the source. So I looked at the information's Twitter, I looked at the CEO that tweeted this out, Jessica Lessin, looked at the author, Hiro Osawa, and on their Twitter feeds, I was just looking for consistent negativity or pieces that had been shared in the past that maybe weren't accurate. Not that those things would write off this report necessarily, but it could throw out more of a red flag. And from their tweet history, I didn't see anything particularly outlandish on there. Some negative pieces for sure, but that's just kind of inherent with media. So without seeing a super clear agenda there, I didn't dig a whole lot deeper after that perusal. And after that, we're kind of just left to assess the credibility of the report based on the context from other information that we have. So breaking down the new information that they shared, net new orders in March, about 21,000. And they also said that there was a spike in orders in January, so maybe January and February were a little bit higher on average than March. If we look at Tesla's domestic China sales only in Q1, the number I have there is about 69,000, so about 23,000 sales per month. Again, that net new orders for March was 21,000. If January and February were a little bit higher, the averages there could line up pretty well. So far that does seem pretty reasonable. The net new orders isn't critical to match exactly to deliveries or anything like that either, because there's probably some backlog in orders that Tesla carries from month to month, and this report doesn't give us any insight there. So I'm not saying this is like a perfect check, but at least it lets us know that that March 21,000 number isn't completely outside of the realm of possibilities. When you get into April then, we had reported sales of about 11,500 vehicles, and then remember reports of about 14,000 vehicles being exported. So I don't think we can glean too much from April to determine validity. And as for May, of course we're just going to have to wait and see. Hopefully in about a week, as I mentioned yesterday, we get the actual May sales reports, and that should give us a lot more insight into whether or not this report is valid. Until then though, we do have a little bit more context we can bring in to assess whether it would be likely for orders to drop specifically dramatically in May, based on how this kind of story in China has unfolded. So you'll remember the big catalyst was the brake failure protest at the Shanghai Auto Show. This person had protested a number of times before, but this one definitely got the most attention. and this instance was the one that caused Tesla to have to make a public apology for their handling of this customer's complaint. That incident happened on April 19th, so I do think a small decline in April orders would be plausible. That's already 2/3 of the way through the month, and then as that fallout continued, I think it does make sense that May would have been lower. So aside from the usual caveats that we have with reports like this of being an anonymous source, this does appear to just be one source. Obviously, we have to apply the appropriate level of skepticism just based on that fact. But aside from that, there's not a whole lot else in the report that makes me comfortable just dismissing it, as I have seen a lot of people doing today. I think what makes the report feel a little bit off or maybe a little bit frustrating is because it feels like Tesla already got hit for this in April. Based on all the confusion about what Tesla's actual deliveries were, then it comes out that it's likely around 11,500 as we talked about. And obviously the media's explanation for that was, of course demand is just poor in China because of all of these issues. But as we talked about yesterday, production was still super strong. Tesla just exported a lot in April. And actually, if this report is correct and Tesla did have 18,000 net orders in April, that clearly shows that Tesla could have delivered way more than they did in China if they had wanted to, and that they were not demand constrained in China in April as a lot of the reporting has suggested, but rather it was just a matter of prioritizing exports, as bulls have argued. Now, of course, no media outlets are going to get to that level of understanding, so what ends up happening is this kind of comes across as being confirmation of all of that reporting that we already had, even though at least partially it's a direct contradiction. Now, I do say partially a contradiction because if this report is accurate, it does still support that general idea that these issues in China could be causing problems for demand. We have seen Tesla in China over the last couple of weeks pushing back a little bit in terms of all of that FUD that had been created. They have threatened legal action against some influencers that have posted misleading things, some media as well, and that has earned Tesla some apologies. But if they are threatening that legal action, then it could be a sign of Tesla having some concern about how this narrative is impacting their business. Now, obviously that could be completely proactive, but just based on all the reporting and information that I've seen, the people that I've talked to in China, to expect this situation to have had no impact on orders, I don't think is logical. I think the magnitude is the big question. Now, even if this report is accurate and orders were cut in half, I don't think it's necessarily terrible news. Obviously, something you would like to avoid, but if we go back to that April number, again, they said more than 18,000 net new orders in April. They only delivered about 11.5. That means the minimum backlog coming into May, the absolute minimum, assuming that there was no backlog carrying over into April from March, which is probably not accurate given the newness of the Model Y. But worst case scenario, that more than 18,000 orders, let's just say it's 18,250 minus the 11,500 Tesla was actually able to deliver. That means the minimum order surplus they had heading into April would be 6,600 orders, plus then 9,800 new orders in May. That's at least 16,500 orders that Tesla could deliver in May. Now, I'm not going to pretend that's a great number. It is only a couple thousand lower than February, the second month of Q1, but Tesla's already coming off in April. That was quite a bit lower than January. Plus, they have rising production, so there would be a lot of ground to potentially make up there domestically in June and via the export market. As for potential backlog being a potential saving grace if there is a bit of a demand pocket, that's not looking super likely right now because if you go to the China Design Studio, delivery for both versions of the Model 3 is currently estimated at 1 to 3 weeks. That's about as short as it gets. And then same thing on the long-range Model Y. They're not making performance there yet, so that still says Q3. So I know so far not the most positive tone from me on this report. I think part of that is just not wanting it to be dismissed. I saw it almost universally dismissed today. And again, I'm not saying don't be skeptical, but I'm also not sure it's healthy to just completely write a report like this off. And it certainly doesn't hurt us to go through those details. So now that we've done that, let's flip the coin over here, look at the other side a little bit. First witness I'll call to the stand here is Elon Musk. So we had a tweet from Elon just yesterday talking about FUD, which is kind of the root cause of these demand concerns in China. He was replying to a tweet from Tesla owner Silicon Valley saying that, quote, "I'm glad you stayed the course despite all the FUD and lies over the years. Nowadays it really looks like you're having fun and enjoying yourself," end quote. Elon replied saying, "Thanks, smiley face. Seriously, it was so insane. FUD is still happening a little, but doesn't resonate when enough people have the product," end quote. I mean, overall, that's my take. That's kind of what I've said consistently about the China situation, although I do think it needs to be managed closely. But if Elon was seeing all this FUD really destroy their order rate and their demand in China, I don't think he would have been quite as jovial in that reply and saying FUD is still happening. Yeah, a little bit. Seems like he'd probably opt for some different words if that was really something that was causing problems right now in China. Potentially a good sign there. Then, of course, we should also consider the actual impact to Tesla if this report is accurate. Tesla as a whole is definitely production constrained. That's evidenced both by almost no inventory being available and many customers having to wait months to take delivery. That's clear. Elon Musk said on the Q1 call that demand is the best it's ever been. So if Tesla doesn't sell those cars from Giga Shanghai in China, they can definitely sell them somewhere else. Tesla this quarter has shipped literal boatloads of Teslas over to Europe from Fremont. Even though the US could clearly absorb more of that production, we've seen Tesla consistently raising prices this quarter. There were no quarter-end incentives last quarter. Again, pretty long wait times, especially on some variants. So Tesla could just meet more of European demand from Shanghai, keep more of Fremont's production here locally, and hey, problem solved. They might have to deal with some different tariffs if they did that, but Tesla has the benefit of being in a very strong margin position right now, and that gives them a lot of flexibility in terms of how they manage their orders and their demand and their logistics and deliveries, all of these things that are related. Think about the fact that we haven't seen Tesla really pull any demand levers in any country that I'm aware of. In fact, we've seen the opposite with Tesla raising prices. We've seen them introduce and then take away the standard range Model Y. Plenty of options exist for Tesla to work through something like this if they needed to, and we just haven't seen them take any of those options yet. The other thing is that Tesla's inventory is so low right now. It's so low. People do not understand how low Tesla's inventory is. That's great for Tesla's financials, but if they needed to build up their inventory a little bit more, that would be completely fine. I was just reading an article today about the Ford Mustang Mach-E and the actual internal combustion engine gasoline-fueled Mustang, and Ford was saying that they were down to 24 days of supply on that Mustang. Automotive News says that's about 1/3 of what is considered a healthy inventory. I've talked about this before. 70 days of inventory is very much the norm in the automotive industry. Tesla has 8. Completely fine if that increases a little bit here. Those cars are going to sell later on. My personal expectation is that May would probably be the peak in terms of FUD in China. We've already, as I mentioned, seen influencers come out and apologize to Tesla. So hopefully that sentiment is in the process right now of turning around. If Tesla has to sit on some cars for a couple months while that happens, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day other than quarterly results. Of course, the broader concern around reports like this is that the issues persist and demand never recovers. But as Elon said there, I think the truth of the product eventually wins out. So again, we should have a better understanding of this in about a week, but just as a forewarning, the media is going to be hyper-focused on this. If there is any weakness in those May numbers, that's going to get pushed hard. I know people are understandably excited about the Plaid event, but the media could very well focus more attention on those May sales numbers than whatever Tesla does at that. So anyway, we'll move on from this topic in a second. I hope that wasn't too thorough, but the last point I wanted to make on this today was to respond to just a lot of comments about this being a perfect example of Tesla not having a PR team hurting them. I think a lot of people are oversimplifying this concept. I'm not saying a PR team is a bad idea, but it's not some silver bullet that's gonna stop or fix any of this stuff from happening. I mean, perfect example here, Gary Black actually got a reply from someone at Tesla today saying, oh, we just don't comment on rumors. That's about all a PR team is gonna be able to do in a situation like this. If you go out there and deny it, well, you just open Pandora's box, because if you don't go from there and deny every rumor possible going forward, the one you don't deny, people are going to take that as being true then. That pretty much forces responses from a PR team to be formulaic, because otherwise you're going to run into those inference problems in the future. In many cases, it's just not worth it. And who cares if the stock goes down 5% one day? If Tesla actually has strong demand in China, we'll know soon. The stock will recover, and in a year, people will just completely erase this from their memory. Again, that's not to say that there's no value in having some say in the messaging. For example, what I would do in this scenario is say that Tesla doesn't comment on rumors, but then refer people back to the Outlook section of the shareholder letter, which says that Tesla expects deliveries this year to grow more than 50%. People reading these articles may not be entirely aware of that, so at least having that as a footnote in all of these articles, which is where it would end up, might help in some small way. Oh, and then one last quick thought on this, and then I promise we'll move on. Yesterday, I did discuss a Q2 production scenario. That obviously had pretty high production numbers for Shanghai for May and June, but that's production side. This is all orders, sales, demand. This is completely separate. I wouldn't expect that to impact Tesla's production rates at all, other than to influence when they might take some downtime to take an opportunity for retooling, because it looks like they already did that with the Model Y in April. To me, this doesn't really have any bearing on that scenario that we walked through yesterday. So I already got a couple of questions on that. Just wanted to clarify. All right, so let's move on. Let's get the other negative media story for the day out of the way here. And those were centered on recalls, a lot of articles about that today. Obviously, earlier this week, we had already talked about the brake caliper bolt issue. Turns out that was only about 6,000 cars. Then there was another recall for about 7,700 Model 3s for various issues with seatbelt fasteners, which always sound a little bit concerning at first, but usually it's an issue of if some other problem happens, then something may occur that may be a problem. So obviously something that you want to get fixed for sure, but generally doesn't cause any issues. Tesla told NHTSA that they weren't aware of any crashes or injuries related to the recalls. So small number of cars, easy fix, pretty standard stuff. There were also reports of a Tesla China recall today, but it was literally for 734 imported Model 3 vehicles, and it was for those same two issues. So again, no big deal. Finally, getting to a story that is a little bit more exciting next here, we have a report from Reuters that CATL is expanding their battery manufacturing in China. They say that they are building an 80 gigawatt hour battery cell plant in Shanghai, according to, quote, 2 people with knowledge of the matter, end quote. Obviously, with this being in Shanghai, it'll be very close to Tesla. I don't think we have a lot of insight yet into Tesla's battery manufacturing plans in Shanghai. Maybe with more suppliers readily available there, Tesla will just rely a little bit more on external suppliers for Shanghai. I kind of hope that's not the case, but we just haven't heard a lot that I recall about those plans. So the timeline of this CATL factory is unclear, but Reuters does share a couple other details. They say, quote, CATL said that it is in talks with Tesla about more collaboration, and Tesla is seeking help from the company on battery solutions, but declined to comment on any plans for additional production capacity, end quote. Then they also added that the second source told them that they are planning to manufacture cell-to-chassis batteries at this facility, which obviously would be the structural battery that Tesla has talked about for some time. So again, no timeline on that yet, but 80 gigawatt hours, that could be enough for 800,000 to 1 million vehicles. Next here we have a couple of good updates on Giga Berlin. First, a couple of new comments from Brandenburg's Minister of Economics, Jörg Steinbach, who, according to RBB24, at a conference, quote, literally said that the construction of the plant is in the final sprint, end quote. He also added that Tesla has hired 1,000 workers so far, and that by the start of production, the number will certainly increase to 3,000 workers. So continued positive comments from Steinbach. Then we also have a couple of reports here on application approval processes. Earlier this week, Der Tagesspiegel had reported that Tesla was ready to submit their application to add battery manufacturing to their permitting application. Remember, we had previously talked about how this could cause another round of public commentary to be needed. Well, it looks like now today that application has been submitted by Tesla, according to a report here from RBB24 again. And the other good news about this is that there seemed to be a wide expectation that this new application from Tesla would require more annual water consumption because of the addition of battery manufacturing, but it looks like that has not changed. So Tesla may have actually just baked that in from their original application. So hopefully that helps expedite the approval of this revised application, and just my super uninformed speculation here, maybe that means Tesla won't have to do the public feedback period again. Wouldn't hold my breath on that, but I guess we can hope. There was one other little tidbit in that Der Tagesspiegel report. It says, quote, and according to Tagesspiegel information, Tesla is committed to the fact that the first electric vehicles in Giga Berlin will roll off the production line in 2021, despite the tight schedule, after the targeted July start became nothing, end quote. So we'll see, but looks like Tesla's still targeting production this year in Berlin. All right, last item today, we'll wrap up with the Plaid Model S. Of course, we're now a week out from first deliveries. As long as that doesn't get postponed again, it'll be a good milestone for Tesla to celebrate an incredible vehicle, which we have learned a little bit more now through Spike's Car Radio podcast, which Jay Leno called into, confirming the report that we had seen a week or two ago from Drive Tesla Canada, I think originally, that Leno had been spotted out at the drag strip with a refreshed Model S. Leno confirmed this and also said that the Plaid Model S ran a 9.247 second quarter mile at 152 mile per hour trap speed, and that there was a National Hot Rod Association official on hand to certify that result. So that should put the Plaid Model S at the top of the list for fastest quarter mile time for a production vehicle, just ahead of a $3 million Bugatti. Obviously pretty impressive for a $120,000 four-door sedan. Certainly taking nothing away from that, but Tesla's spot at the top may be short-lived. The Rimac Nevera, a brand new all-electric hypercar from Rimac, apparently just put down a quarter mile time of 8.62 seconds. So it'll probably take at least the Roadster, if not the SpaceX Roadster, for Tesla to top that time, but the Rimac Nevera is a $2.4 million car. They're only going to make 150 of them, and obviously is not a four-door sedan. So, like I said, shouldn't take too much away from Tesla's time other than maybe that official top spot. But if Tesla's time does get certified before Rimacs, maybe they'll hold that at least for a little bit. All right, I know I said lastly on that topic, but as I'm recording, Elon did tweet out hashtag Bitcoin, a broken heart emoji, and a meme of a couple people sitting on a couch looking grumpy, reading, her, I know I said it would be over between us if you ever quoted another Linkin Park song, but I've found someone else. Him, so in the end, it didn't even matter, end quote. Which, I don't know, it looks pretty ominous for Tesla's position in Bitcoin, despite the fact that Elon had previously tweeted that Tesla has diamond hands. This is definitely giving off the direct opposite vibes of that. If Tesla did exit, the price of Bitcoin has been right around $38,000. If they sold around that level, I would expect somewhere around a $250 million gain for Q2. So we'll see, and if Elon has any other tweets on this tonight, we'll just have to catch up on those tomorrow. So that's where we'll wrap it up for today. I guess just a couple of quick closing thoughts. Let's just try to remember to keep a high level perspective. Remember, Tesla is now at a level where the day-to-day stock price fluctuations, they don't really need to be concerned about those things. Tesla's cash flow positive, the balance sheet is in a really good position. Tesla shouldn't need to raise capital. And even if they did, and even if news reports push the stock down even further, Tesla shouldn't have any trouble doing that. So my perspective is to not worry too much about the day-to-day action in the stock price. Again, over time, the truth is going to win out. Understanding what that truth is what's most valuable, not watching the market flail around trying to find it. So with that said, as always, thank you for listening. Make sure you're subscribed and signed up for notifications. You can also find me on Twitter at Tesla Podcast, and I'll see you tomorrow for the Friday, June 4th episode of Tesla Daily. Thank you.